Since TikTok was launched in the international market in 2017, it has amassed over 1 billion users and has become one of the most popular apps in the world. For most people, it's a fun, albeit addictive way to pass time, but there's also an incredibly dark side. From fatal challenges and dangerous trends to murderous users and not safe for life content. All of the entries on this iceberg I created are disturbing, but will start out relatively mild before progressing to some of the most depraved content on the internet. Let's investigate. If you enjoy internet mysteries and generally disturbing content, feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications for more content like this. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can become a Ko-fi member or a channel member to gain access to uncut videos and other perks, or you can leave me a tip by clicking the thanks under this video. Thanks to anyone who considers this. This video will contain vague discussions of topics that might be triggering to some, including death, murder, abuse, and SA. The final tier especially is very not safe for life, so viewer discretion is advised. The Rotoscope filter is not at all inherently disturbing, it's just a filter that adds an animated outline effect with different flashing colours. The reason why this filter is on this iceberg is because of what people were doing with the filtered videos. While many of the clips with this filter were simply of people dancing, there were also plenty where people would get naked, but of course you wouldn't be able to see anything more than a vague, fluid outline. However, more or less as soon as this trend began, there was a surge of response videos claiming that you could remove the filter from other people's videos and therefore see them naked. Thankfully, I don't think there actually was a way to remove the filter after the clip had been posted, so these clickbait responses were probably just trying to get views and/or drive traffic to these various ad-filled sites that claim to do so. Fairy flying was a recent trend in which people posted videos that were edited to look like they were floating in mid-air. However, many of these showed only the lower half of the body from behind and kinda looked like the person was hanging, sparking concerns that this could be triggering to people who have considered doing this themselves, or who have known someone who died in that way. There's also the possibility that it could encourage particularly younger users to harm themselves while attempting to recreate this trend. The banana and Sprite challenge involves eating a couple of bananas, then downing a litre or so of Sprite. I'm guessing it evolved from the challenge where someone would just down a bottle of fizzy drink and would end up burping uncontrollably, but the addition of the bananas often makes people physically sick. There were many clips on TikTok where an unsuspecting victim, sometimes homeless people, drug addicts, or other vulnerable individuals, would be offered something, $10 for example, to do this challenge without realising it would make them sick. The reason why the combination does this is because bananas are digested slowly and the average stomach only has a capacity of around 500 millilitres, so drinking a litre of Sprite when it's already half full with bananas fills the stomach beyond capacity, and the gas also increases the pressure, meaning the stomach has to relieve the pressure somehow, by vomiting. Even with the desired effect of this challenge, it's a bit of an extreme prank to play on someone, but it can potentially damage the kidneys and even pose a risk of choking, so it's much more dangerous than you might imagine. In 2023, a video circulated on TikTok showing the aftermath of a woman giving birth on a plane. Naturally, everyone was clapping, congratulating the woman, and some were filming their own clips. Even though the birth of a baby is usually a cause for celebration, considering no one in their right mind would choose to give birth on a plane, many people would still find it overwhelming not having any privacy and people being more concerned with people creating a potentially viral TikTok than with the comfort of the new mother. What makes this even worse though is that the woman didn't even know she was pregnant. This phenomenon is known as cryptic pregnancy and often occurs when people already have irregular periods and don't experience the typical symptoms of pregnancy, or these symptoms are misdiagnosed. Although TikTok is my favourite way to waste time, I can't deny it's a breeding ground for misinformation. Some of the most dangerous types of misinformation are to do with medical advice. It's not uncommon to see users whose medical qualifications are limited to a GCSE in biology sharing medical advice that is useless at best and actively dangerous at worst. In the last year or so, there's been a boom in interest in gut health, with various hacks being promoted, such as drinking olive oil every day to prevent bloating. Many of these hacks simply don't work and encourage people to waste their time on quackery rather than consulting with a legit doctor when they might be suffering with a medical condition. Another far more concerning example is from a couple of years ago when there was an influx of videos teaching people how to self-induce abortion, which of course moderators had to start cracking down on. Here's another stupid challenge known as the penny challenge. It involves someone plugging a charger halfway into the socket, then holding a penny against the exposed prongs, resulting in an electric shock. This can result in fingers and hands being lost and also house fires, so it is a very dangerous thing to attempt. One mother was outraged in December 2021 when her 10-year-old daughter asked Alexa to recommend a challenge for her, and Alexa told her to do this penny challenge. I wasn't able to find any documented cases of people being seriously injured from this challenge, but there were numerous incidents of the plug socket setting on fire. John's Bones is the name of a TikTok user who's basically obsessed with bones. He's been fascinated by osteology ever since he was a child, and now runs a business selling various different types of bones and body parts, from teeth priced at $18 to full skeletons costing nearly $10,000. John has faced backlash from users who question where he gets these bones from, with some even accusing him of being a serial killer. This is highly unlikely, but it is worth noting that osteology has roots in grave robbing. Throughout history, students and doctors have been known to take corpses from graves for their studies, and the stolen remains were often from Native Americans, enslaved people, and oppressed groups. John claims that the bones he sells are responsibly sourced and specifically prepared for medical student training. Slightly off topic, but I noticed John looks quite a lot like the guy in the infamous Grave Robbing for Morons video. There's no way they are the same person, as the guy in this video would probably be around 50 years old now, but it's kind of amusing that they look alike and both have an unusual interest in bones. Recently, an account by the name of Dr. Kim started posting clips showing the before and after of the facelifts he'd performed. Not unheard of on TikTok, as there are many cosmetic surgeons who use the app to promote their work. However, the after clips showed a drastic change and left many feeling horrified and baffled. The patients certainly looked younger after surgery, but they also looked like totally different people. Some of the results don't look that bad objectively, while others' faces look out of proportion, and with such an extreme lift and the skin being so tight, I'm not even sure if they're able to properly close their eyes. It is worth noting that the after clips were taken shortly after the surgery, so they might look more natural after they've fully healed. There have been a number of TikTok users who have been accused of faking disabilities and disorders, from Tourette's syndrome to dissociative identity disorder. I'm not going to mention any specific users here because I'm only briefly summarising the topic. I don't have time to spend hours researching one entry out of over 40 on this iceberg, and considering this is a very sensitive subject, I don't want to run the risk of falsely accusing someone who is genuinely disabled of faking, as this has happened before on TikTok. Feel free to look into this further yourself, but please don't just go throwing accusations around without proof. In 2022, TikTok faced backlash after there was somewhat of a trend of families in Syrian camps begging on livestream, and it emerged that the company allegedly takes up to 70% of the proceeds. According to the BBC, so-called TikTok middlemen would provide displaced families with funds and equipment to set up the live streams, then take most of the money. They claim to work with agencies affiliated to TikTok in China and the Middle East, who gave the families access to TikTok accounts as part of a global strategy to recruit live streamers and encourage users to spend more time on the app. The milk crate challenge involves people stacking a number of milk crates into a pyramid shape, then running up and down them without destroying the structure. Participants have suffered various injuries after falling off the crates, including dislocated shoulders, broken wrists, and even spinal cord injuries. TikTok has removed all these videos now, so if you search Milk Crate Challenge, you'll just be met with a message that reads, "Your safety matters. Some online challenges can be dangerous, disturbing, or even fabricated. Learn how to recognize harmful challenges so you can protect your health and well-being." Haseen Hossam is an Egyptian TikToker who was sentenced to 3 years in prison for human trafficking and inciting debauchery after encouraging other women to also start posting on TikTok to earn money. She was also fined nearly $19,000 for violating the values and principles of the Egyptian family. She was initially acquitted for this before being charged with human trafficking and sentenced to 10 years in prison. A retrial resulted in her sentence being reduced to 3 years. The teeth shaving trend refers to the surge of people getting their teeth shaved down in preparation for crowns so they can get straighter and whiter teeth. I've heard of a few cases of people going to a dentist to get what they thought would be veneers, where only a thin layer of the teeth need to be shaved down, and they actually end up being left with these tiny pegs protruding from their gums before crowns were fitted over them. Most of these cases seem to have involved the person going to a different country to get this dental work, so I'm guessing the language barrier is partly what caused them to be misled. There are some advantages of crowns as opposed to veneers. It is a quicker and cheaper alternative because unlike veneers, which are just a thin shell-like covering, the teeth don't need to be aligned before the crown is applied. However, crowns are much more dangerous and painful because you're at a much higher risk of nerve damage and future dental problems. 1 in 4 crown teeth need root canal treatment in the future, and considering around 60% of each tooth is removed, if there are further problems with what's left of the tooth, extraction might end up being the only solution. Art of Zoo was a hashtag that quickly spread on TikTok after users found that Googling Art of the Zoo would reveal images of people having inappropriate contact with animals. As with many similar trends, users would be quite vague, and rather than explaining what the search was, they'd post videos showing their expressions before and after Googling, leaving others with no option but to find out for themselves. While some users were clearly distressed by this, others seemed to find it funny, which thankfully led to criticism from people who pointed out that the images were literally animal abuse. Taylor Frankie Paul is an influencer who was popular in Mormon mum TikTok circles. She faced a lot of backlash after admitting that she was involved in what she called soft swinging with her husband, meaning they invited other people into their relationship but were only actually intimate with each other. During a live stream, she announced the couple's divorce, implying that the reason was that she had actually had physical contact with someone else without her husband's consent, and she'd developed feelings for him. The following year, she was arrested and charged with 3 misdemeanors: assault, criminal mischief, and domestic violence in the presence of a child, which allegedly caused injury to the child. Taylor has since moved on and is now pregnant with another baby. Coloured contact lenses to temporarily change the colour of the eyes have been around for a long time, but, seeking more permanent results, a few people have decided to have surgery. A video went viral on TikTok in late 2023 of a woman who had some kind of laser surgery to change her brown eyes to a bright blue colour. It should come as no surprise that this is extremely risky. Nadine Bruner, a model, travelled to Colombia in 2018 to get a silicone implant in her eyes to change the colour from brown to grey, and ended up losing 80% of the vision in her right eye and 50% in her left. Thankfully, it doesn't sound like the woman in the TikTok video has suffered any side effects. Yet. And her eyes do look striking, but is it really worth risking blindness for? If you're a frequent TikTok scroller, you might have come across a live around a year ago of a baby with a severe case of hydrocephalus. This is a condition that causes a baby's head to be significantly enlarged due to excess fluid in the brain. Reception was mixed regarding this livestream, with some accusing the parents of using their baby's condition for sympathy and attention. However, it's likely that they were trying to raise money for medical bills. Either way, it's heartbreaking to consider how much this baby might be suffering, especially if the family can't afford treatment. 2021 was perhaps the peak of ridiculous TikTok trends, but one of the most dangerous by far was the Blackout challenge, in which users were encouraged to hold their breath until they passed out due to lack of oxygen. Participants were usually children, and the challenge was actually directly linked to numerous deaths, including 9-year-old Ariane Arroyo, who attempted it in February 2021. 12-year-old Archie Battersby also took part, resulting in him being on life support for months before he eventually died in August 2023. T. Rightfinger was a 19-year-old TikToker who, in 2021 and 2022, posted a number of very concerning videos. For example, one where she was crying uncontrollably with wounds on her face and blood smeared on her hands. She didn't explain what had happened, but the caption read, "When it's toxic, leading some to wonder if she was in an abusive relationship. On her 19th birthday, she uploaded a video listing various life lessons she'd learnt, including, "It's okay to feel lost sometimes," and "Always take risks in life, you never know when it's going to end." On the 16th of October 2022, she went missing in Queensland, Australia, and after a major land and air search, her body was found around 6 weeks later. Her death is not thought to have been due to foul play. The Foreigner Challenge was a trend on TikTok around a year ago where children and teenagers were posting clips of themselves to the song Foreigner by Pop Smoke. They'd start out with selfies or clips of them dancing, then suddenly they'd turn into nudes. This is not the first time CP has been found on TikTok, though oftentimes it's adults sharing such content, not the children themselves. There was a disturbing trend last year in which a number of TikTok accounts were posting deepfakes of murder victims describing how they were killed. Many of these victims were children, including 20-month-old royalty Marie Floyd, who was stabbed and put in an oven by her grandma in 2018. Of course, true crime is a popular topic of discussion on TikTok and on the internet in general, and I think it's important to shed light on such topics, providing they're covered in a respectful and considerate way. But there's something that just doesn't sit right with me about making a deepfake of a murdered child. In 2022, TikTok users in Indonesia began filming themselves jumping in front of moving trucks and cars in what became known as the Angel of Death Challenge. In one incident, 16 teenagers attempted the challenge. Most of them were injured and 2 of them died due to skull injuries. This is not actually the first time the trend has been seen on TikTok, or the first time that someone has died trying it, but it seems to have become more popular around this time. A 13-year-old and a 14-year-old died previously in separate incidents. In March 2023, 18-year-old Cara Santorelli posted a TikTok of herself sat in her car with the caption, when they tried to call me a bad driver, but I've never hit a person or an actual car. Just 6 days later, she was driving down a highway in Florida when she collided with another car. Both Cara and the driver of the other car died in the accident. Last year, a video went viral on TikTok showing 3 girls brutally attacking 13-year-old Kira Hart. She had been invited to a sleepover by the girls, who she believed were her friends, but things soon took a terrifying turn when they began punching and slapping her before escalating to poking her and stabbing her with a knife. No one knows why the girls turned on her, but their demeanour in the video suggests that they were enjoying torturing her for several hours. Because they were minors, the girls responsible were only given a warning and a fine, and never faced any actual consequences for their abhorrent actions. In 2023, Dean and Michelle Nasker filed a lawsuit against TikTok after the self-inflicted death of their 16-year-old son Chase. They claimed that he was, quote, targeted, overwhelmed, and actively goaded into making the decision after being exposed to countless depressing and psychologically disturbing videos on the app. Totu is the nickname of a toddler who went viral on TikTok when users became concerned that she was being abused. There were videos showing her looking terrified, frozen for no apparent reason, with bruises on her body and acting unusually. In earlier clips, she appeared to be happier and healthier, yet seemed to deteriorate in a relatively short space of time. I actually made a whole video on this case if you want to know the full story, I'll link it in the description. I personally don't think she was being abused, for reasons I covered extensively in that video, but many users still believe there is something sinister going on. 14-year-old Alia Salazar was filming a TikTok dance video with 2 other children when she was shot dead in August 2022. 2 teenage girls and one of their boyfriends, Emilio Vargas, who was 21 years old at the time, were arrested in connection with the shooting, and one of the girls stated that it could have been an accident. Emiliano was charged with permitting or providing a minor with a firearm, and the 2 girls were charged with reckless manslaughter and possession of a firearm and faced up to 6 years in prison. A few days ago, TikTok user Love Me to Love You Too posted quite a creepy clip in which an unknown woman approached her in a restaurant in Nigeria and offered her €700 to have contact with her and her husband. The user politely declined, but the woman was very persistent and didn't want to take no for an answer. The video was uploaded as a funny, albeit strange interaction, though the comments proposed some terrifying explanations. One stated that their friend had experienced something similar, and it ended with her being kidnapped, SA'd, and tortured for days. Others suggested that the woman might have been an organ trafficker. Obviously, no one knows for sure what the woman's true intentions were, but considering she was offering a decent amount of money and being very persistent, I feel like it wasn't just an innocent hookup. Since 2008, there have been a number of drownings in Austin, Texas, that some TikTok users believed were suspicious. The incidence of these drownings seemed to increase around the late 2010s, reaching a peak in late 2022 to mid-2023, during which time a total of 7 bodies had been found in the area, leading some to wonder if there was a serial killer on the loose. Police stated that there was no evidence of any foul play or of any connection between the deaths. However, users who live in Austin noticed that there seemed to be an increased police presence in the area around April 2023, which worried them even more and resulted in various videos discussing the cases, alleging that the so-called Rainy Street Killer was responsible. A few years ago, Dan Silly began uploading videos on YouTube showing himself harassing women on the streets of Los Angeles. He would never actually touch the women in the videos, but he would approach them in an aggressive manner and say things like, "Can I take a photo of your butt?" He He has admitted that people call him the downtown LA predator. Despite some clips showing him asking these women if they are 18, he is a registered SO due to an incident that occurred in 2017 when he harassed a minor with sexual intent. Although he started out posting YouTube videos years ago, I guess he moved over to TikTok when the app gained popularity. In 2013, 23-year-old Barcid McLean killed and dismembered his mother, then put her remains in duffel bags to dump in various locations in New York. This itself isn't really relevant to TikTok, but the story went viral last year when various users were sharing the photo that Barcid took of himself holding his mother's decapitated head. In August 2013, 18-year-old Isabella Guzman murdered her mother by stabbing her 79 times during a schizophrenic episode. She apparently didn't even realise that she had killed her mum and thought she was killing a woman named Cecilia in order to save the world. She avoided prison and was instead sent to the Colorado Mental Health Institute for psychiatric treatment until she was no longer considered a danger to herself or anyone else. In 2020, edited clips of her 2013 court hearing circulated on TikTok, with songs including Sweet But Psycho by Ava Max and Criminal by Britney Spears. Users commented on how beautiful she was and how she looked too innocent to have murdered anyone. Some even went as far as to suggest that Isabella's mother must have somehow deserved what happened to her. Since then, various fan pages have been created on other social media sites, and Isabella has become somewhat of an online celebrity. Last year, a video showing a cat being put in a blender was a popular topic of discussion on TikTok and other social media. Among various memes and reactions, some users were trying to investigate the video and find out who was responsible so they could be reported to the police. It's thought that it was filmed in China due to the Chinese characters on the blender, but as far as I'm aware, no one has managed to figure out exactly who made this horrifying video. Abi Abulaban, also known as Jin Kid on TikTok, is known for his comedy skits and impersonations, for example of Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and various Skyrim characters in his viral series Skyrim in Real Life. In October 2021, he was staying in a hotel after his wife told him to move out of their apartment. He snuck back into the home 3 days after their argument to install a listening app on their 5-year-old daughter's iPad. A few days later, he heard his wife talking with another man through the app, and in a fit of rage, he went to the apartment, shot his wife and the man she was talking with, killing them both, before picking his daughter up from school and calling his mother to admit what he had just done. He was arrested shortly after and now faces life in prison. In 2020, Zachary Lam posted videos on TikTok showing an ongoing feud between him and his neighbours. It started when his neighbour Catherine Durham had told him to slow down when he was driving down their street, and he had recorded the incident, calling Catherine Karen. On the 4th of May, 6 weeks after this incident, things took a violent turn when Zachary allegedly tried to hit Catherine's son Gage with his car as he was riding his bike out of the driveway. Later that day, Gage, his older brother William, and their father went to Zachary's house to confront him about what had happened. They were all unarmed, but Zachary was carrying a knife and a stun gun. A fight erupted and the father was stabbed in the back and left underarm, resulting in a punctured lung that led to his death later in hospital. Zachary was charged with second-degree reckless manslaughter, but was acquitted after it was determined he acted in self-defense. Around 2020, an app named RandaNatica became very popular and people were posting their experiences on TikTok and other social media. RandaNatica randomly generates a location on a map for you to explore, and people ended up finding some very interesting, strange, and at times disturbing things. By far the most terrifying finding was shared by TikTok user Henry, who went to the location the app gave him with friends and found a suitcase with human remains inside. Police determined that the remains belonged to Jessica Lewis and Austin Wenner, who had been killed by their landlord after an argument about them not paying their rent. I uploaded a video on this case and a separate one on the RandaNatica app, and we'll link these in the description if you're interested. Claire Miller is a TikToker who mostly posted lip sync and dancing videos. Most of her content was harmless, certainly not out of the ordinary for a girl of her age. However, there were a few that were much more concerning, showing what appeared to be a bloody latex glove and a giraffe toy covered in blood. She had a 19-year-old sister who was in a wheelchair and required constant care due to cerebral palsy. One night in February 2021, while her sister was sleeping, Claire snapped and stabbed her to death with a kitchen knife before calling the police and coldly confessing, "I stabbed my sister." Police showed up to find her drenched in blood, and outside there was snow stained with blood too. She pled guilty to third-degree murder and faces between 12.5 to 40 years in prison. Beanbag Adventure is a Douyin user, the Chinese version of TikTok, who uploads videos of himself exploring abandoned buildings. In January 2022, he filmed an alleged abandoned organ harvesting lab in China, where he found a pool filled with the decomposing bodies of children. He returned to the lab in December that year and found bottles that weren't there the first time, and the bodies were still there, though the pool had been covered with a blue sheet. The third and final time he visited a few days later, he explored more of the lab and found a fetus in a jar and a pile of bones. These videos were re-uploaded on TikTok, and various creators shared their own theories about what the lab had actually been used for and whether or not the clips were even real. In 2021, a 4-minute video of a 22-year-old Bangladeshi woman being gang raped and tortured circulated on WhatsApp in Bangladesh and India. The incident occurred in India, and it wasn't an isolated occurrence. One of the perpetrators was a TikToker named Ridoy Babo, and it turned out that he and his accomplices had been using TikTok and Facebook to traffic vulnerable women. They would enter India illegally to smuggle the women into the country after making false promises of job opportunities, then forcing them into the trade. While most of the women they targeted were Bangladeshi, their network stretches as far as Dubai and other Middle Eastern countries. Ridoy and 5 others were arrested after the SA incident, and he and one of the others were shot as they tried to escape the police. In 2021, 23-year-old Nicola Priest began posting videos on TikTok about her daughter who had recently died. She would share photos and clips with captions talking about how much she missed her. Naturally, other users tried to comfort her and offer their condolences. Little did they know what had actually happened. Nicola had put her 3-year-old daughter, Kaylee Jade, to bed around 7 PM one night before joining her boyfriend at the time, Callum Redfern, in the bedroom. Shortly after, Kaylee started crying and interrupted the couple, who, in a fit of rage, beat her to death. A post-mortem showed that Kaylee had suffered various injuries from past abuse, including broken ribs, lower leg fractures, and a broken sternum. Nicola and Callum were sentenced to 15 and 14 years respectively in prison for Kaylee's death. Duckpack51 refers to a horrific video that went viral on TikTok in June 2021. It starts out with a young girl dancing before suddenly cutting to footage of a 19-year-old Mexican criminal getting executed by cartel members. The victim was Rodolfo Bellucci, who began his criminal career at the age of 15. The video initially went unnoticed by TikTok's moderation team, presumably because of the seemingly innocent beginning, but after countless traumatized users reported it, it was quickly removed. A shocking video circulated on TikTok in 2021 showing 25-year-old Joel Archinija Sayans playing football with the decapitated head of 51-year-old James Garcia, who he had just murdered and mutilated. Of course, the video was quickly removed from the app, but not before a number of users had been traumatized by it. You can still find some clips describing the video without actually showing it. No mercy in Mexico was a trend that started with a graphic video of a father and son being executed in Mexico. They were apparently part of a police gang, and the son was forced to watch his father being murdered before it was his turn. Following the original video, various other not safe for life clips that were apparently also filmed in Mexico were shared under the hashtag #NoMercyInMexico. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments, plus any suggestions you might have for a future Iceberg video. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Huge thank you to my Ko-fi members and channel members whose names are on screen now. I really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week in a new video.